Hey everybody, Mark Bates here, and I wanted to give you a quick tour of what's new in Buffalo 0.13. So we're going to be looking at Beta 2 today, just so you know where we stand in terms of what you're about to see here. First thing I want to show is Go module support. So I'm going to start by showing my Go path here. You can see it's users Mark Bates Dropbox Go. And I can show you that I am currently not inside of my Go path. I'm in a temporary directory here. And I have Go 111 modules turned on. So when you turn on Go 111 modules, you also turn on the Buffalo support for Go 111 modules. Now, 111 modules are currently experimental, and so isn't the Buffalo support. So, with them turned on, I can say, let's do a new little app here. We'll say Buffalo new instead of Coke this time. Let's do something a little bit different here. We'll just say Cola. How's that? It's the name I haven't used before. So you can see now we are outside the Go path. Buffalo is installing this brand new app for me here. It's building this brand new app just like it did inside my Go path, which is pretty exciting. Now, there are still issues with Go modules. I'm not going to get into them here. You can certainly investigate them on your own, so be wary when using Go modules. But please try it out, open issues, specifically, hopefully before we get to the final release here, if you do find issues that are Buffalo specific. So we have our application here, our little Cola app, and it's a normal Buffalo app. The only difference is we now have Go module files here. So let's start up our application here, and we will go to 127. 13, oops, we haven't created our database. That makes sense. So let's do that now. We'll do create all here. And that's going to create our database just like it did when we were inside the Go path here. So everything works just as it did previously, except now we are not inside of our Go path here. So there we go. We now have our apps running here, and I'm going to start... our database created. I'm going to start our application back up here, and voila, we have an application outside of our Go path running with Go module. Now, the next thing I want to look at is the new events package that we have in this latest version of Buffalo here, and it is github.com/gobuffalo/events. So it is separate from this release. You can start using it today, and you can start writing tools that emit events and listen to events. So let's take a look at what it looks like inside of a Buffalo app. Let's open up our application here, and we'll go to Actions app here, and I'm just going to add at the very top of my file here a simple init function, and I'm going to call events.listen, and all I'm going to do is pass it a function that receives an event. Now notice I am doing an error check here, and that's because you can only register a listener one per name. We are using an anonymous name here, so it's not as big a deal. And the first argument we get back is actually a delete function, which allows us to remove that listener from the event system. But we're not going to cover that right now. What we are going to do here is... I'm going to do a little print line here, and we're just going to print off the kind of message. And of course, I'm going to handle that error here. So we've now registered a listener that's going to get triggered every single time an event comes into our system, and it's going to print off the word event and then the kind of event that we're looking at here. So already you can see that Buffalo rebuilt my application, and there are already a couple events being triggered. Buffalo app start and Buffalo worker start here. And if I go to my app here and I refresh, you can see now there are two new events, Buffalo route started and Buffalo route finished. That's pretty cool. So we're getting information now about the app starting, workers starting, routes finishing as well. Okay, let's do something slightly more interesting here. let's say if the kind of message we're getting is not a route finished message, we're just going to return. We only want to listen to route finished messages. So now that we know we've got a route finished, let's look at what information we get with that event here. So a payload for an event is really just a fancy map of string to empty interface, and it has a few other features on it that we're not really going to talk too much about here. So what we are going to do is we're going to say printf here, and what I'm curious to see really is what is the name of the key and what types are associated with that key. So I'm going to refresh my screen again here. And so you can see these are the three things that are being emitted by our event here. So I'm just going to paste them in so we can see. So you can see in particular we have the route info. So this was the route that was requested, the HTTP request itself, and the Buffalo context that came along with it. So, like I said, I wanted to do something fun with this here. So let's take all of, let's create a new thing here, and we'll call it route log here. And it's just going to be a slice of Buffalo route infos. And now every time, actually, sorry, before I do that, let's now in our events here, so when we're listening to our route, from our payload here, let's try to pluck the route out of it. So if it's not okay, so if the route doesn't exist, if there's no payload called route in there, then we will just return. Now let's check just to make sure that our route is what we think it is, which is a Buffalo route info. And again, if it's not okay, we're going to return it. I'm just going to get rid of all of that down here. And finally, I'm going to append that route to my route log as such. So I come back here, and we've got a couple of errors. So invalid operation on an error. Oops, sorry, that's an error, not a Boolean. So we can, we'll return here, same thing again. Sorry, this actually isn't okay. That's my bad. Like that. Okay. So pluck will return either an empty interface if it finds a thing or an error if it doesn't. So in this case, if it doesn't find it, we're just going to return because the information we need is not there. If the information is there, but it's not the type we need, we're also going to return. Otherwise, we're going to append it. And of course, as we do our hits here, we don't see anything being printed off, but we should be hopefully logging that out. But let's see in just a second if we are or not. So this brings me to the next new feature we have here, which is the download renderer. So let's open up our home action here, and I'm just going to create a new action. We'll call it log downloader. Here. So remember all those lovely logs we built a minute ago? Well, we're going to build a CSV file for it. We're going to allow you to download those as a CSV. So we're going to have a logs, which is a slice of strings here. Then we're going to loop through the route log. And so you can see we've got all sorts of information here. So now we just need to decide which information we want. And I think in this case, all we're going to do is, let's see here. We've got the path and the path name. So let's just put the path name in the log. How's that sound? Yeah. So what we're going to say here is we're going to say logs equals append logs and then another string slice here. And all we're going to put in there, actually, we'll put a couple things here. We'll put the path, path name as well. And we'll say the RI method, okay? So those are the things we're going to put inside of our log. Now we need to actually render our log or let people download our log here. So I'm going to say it's 200 and I'm going to use the new download function, which takes the context. It takes the name that we want to download, CSV here, and then finally the thing we want to render. There we go. Sorry, it has to be a reader. My bad. So we're going to use the CSV package, the Go CSV package here. This lovely little package. And we're going to create a new CSV reader. Since the download function takes a reader. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new bytes buffer here. Then I'm going to use the CSV package to create a new writer here, into the bytes buffer, like such. Now I can say write all of our records here, all of our logs into it. And we're going to make sure we flush everything into our buffer. Now I can return the bytes buffer and we are good. So what we have done now, hopefully, if we've done this correctly, is taken all of the requests that we have, put them into this array. We're now creating a CSV file that people can download. So let's just map our new action here, and we'll call it /logs, and is a log downloader. So there we go. We're going to hit the home page here again. We'll hit a few endpoints. I just refreshed it a bunch of times. Now if I click logs, you notice I got a logs.csv file. And if I open it up, it's a little small on my screen here, but you can see that all of our logs got put in there. So now we can use our event logger, our new render download method to very quickly write our own custom downloads here. So I created a CSV one, but you could download any type you want, and it is just that simple. All you need really is the name of the file and an IO reader to do it. While we're talking about events, I want to very quickly show how you can use the event system with Buffalo plugins via its CLI interface. So here I have a Buffalo plugin called Listen. It's very straightforward. You can see there's a command here. It requires a payload, and the payload is going to be a JSON version of the event. And now remember earlier I said payloads are kind of slightly glorified map, just string to interface, empty interface. They are, but one of the things they deal with is marshalling and unmarshalling of the event payload. Because not everything in Go can be marshaled, like say a function can't be marshaled. So unfortunately, you lose some of that level of detail when you're using the CLI version of the event system, but you get enough detail that you get the information you need here. So here is a very simple, this is a Cobra command here. I return an error if there's no payload. Then I simply unmarshal the event, and I'm calling whatever the event listener, in this particular case, this is a little helper function here. But as you can see, all it does is print the word listen in brackets and then the kind of event that you get. So I'm just going to install this Buffalo plugin here. And one of the things when I do this now, if I look at the available commands on this plugin, you can see that echo. There's a listen command here, and you notice that the Buffalo command it wraps is events, and this is a new hook in the plugin toolchain that if you if you wrap the Buffalo command events, then Buffalo will start sending you automatically any events that happen in the system via that command. So when we now start up our app here, if I go back, oops, actually my app is actually already started over here. I'm just gonna clear it. Here we go. So now if I start my app, you can see all of a sudden I'm getting events like Buffalo refresh build started. And Buffalo refresh build finished, right? There we go. There's Buffalo app start, Buffalo worker start being sent to that plugin. And we want to look a little bit more. We can add the, we'll say e.kind here, and then the payload. Actually, we'll just add that to the end of our listen function. Here we go, e.payload. I'm going to reinstall my plugin. There we go. Restart my app. And let's see what we're getting here. You can see, look at that, the route started. All sorts of stuff. I got some context information about what's happening, the current route, the environment, the authenticity tokens, the content types, information about the app, its address, and stuff like that. Same thing with the route finished. You can see I get a lot of information in there about what's actually being used. So very exciting that you can now receive this information via plugins. So if you've always wanted to be able to listen to, say, Buffalo rebuilding your application during development and trigger some events, you absolutely can do that now via a plugin. Or you can write a Go package and add it right into your app, and it too will get that information. And when it does, it will do whatever it is you want it to. So that's the event system kind of in a nutshell here, which is, I think, a really exciting part of Buffalo 0.13. Now, to round this off, let's just look at a couple small little features that I think will make people's lives tremendously better. So let's create a new widget here. Just as we did before. Now remember, I'm doing all of this outside of the Go path using just Go modules, which is, I think, again, pretty exciting. So let's make sure we migrate our database now that we have created our widget. There we go. And if we go back to our browser, there we go. And we can add some widgets just as before. So nothing unusual there at all. So let's see where things get kind of interesting here. One of the first things I want to show you is partial layouts. So now you can add a layout to your partials here, and we'll call it just layout.html here. And if I go into my templates, widgets underscore layouts.html. Here we go. I'm going to add a new div, and I'm going to add a style to that div. We'll say background color blue, and then I'm just going to yield like we do in regular layouts here. So if I go to create a new layout, create a new widget, and you can see now my partial has a blue background. Again, kind of a cool new feature. You can imagine how this can be very useful for building all sorts of really kind of complex, interesting kind of things around your partials. Finally, I want to show a feature that I think is going to be very popular amongst API developers, and it's around the auto feature. So I've rebuilt this app off screen as an API app, and we all know that the auto feature, which was introduced, I believe, in 0.12, allows for the switching or the responding of type, like say the widgets, based on the content type. So if it's HTML, it shows HTML. If it's JSON, it shows JSON. But the default has always been HTML, which is a problem for API users. So here, for example, if I just do this is paw, if I do a very simple get with no headers at all, including the content type, I get back garbage. And the reason being is it's trying to find index.html because if I look at the request, it doesn't know what type of content this is, so it fails. Now, if it tries to find HTML, doesn't have those templates on disk. I think you've seen this before. If I change this to text HTML, this time, I'm sorry, not text HTML. If I do application JSON, I get a successful request this time because the header is correct and it's going to return JSON here as opposed to HTML. In 0.13, there is a new render option called default content type. And when you set this, which is set by default for brand new API applications, if you set it to say something like application JSON, that will now be the default as opposed to HTML. So if I go back to paw here, if I just simply refresh, you can see I now get application JSON, even though I haven't actually assigned the header. And if I turn the header on here, it still works. And if I change it to text HTML, I get the error again because it's looking for index HTML. And again, if I turn it off, it works fine. So that should hopefully help API developers ensure that they're always getting back the correct response from auto that they expect, while still not having to change their code to use something like render.json explicitly, and still giving them that option of that nice fallback to other types if should they want it. And anyway, that's it for our quick look at what is new in 0.13. There is a ton that's new, a ton that's been fixed, so many great improvements. Please check out the changelog, the blogs, the documentation, and more. Please try out these betas. We're really trying to make sure we get nice, solid releases, and we need your help to do that. Try out these betas, try out the RCs, and please report issues before we release the final versions. So that's it for now. I hope this helps. This video was brought to you by Gopher Guides. If you're an organization, conference, or user group that is looking for Go training, please visit gopherguides.com. All training is custom designed to match your educational needs.